This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Patrick Mareuil, Managing Director EMEA at Airship. Patrick, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thank you, Art. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, to say that you live at the time of change would be understatement. Pick up any area of your life, and you can find a substantial change there. Many changes were caused or accelerated by COVID-19 last year. In the mobile industry specifically, a titanic shift was caused by the notion of privacy and safety, ownership of people's digital information. Questions such as how can people protect their online data? Should they let companies use their data, even anonymized, for generating profit for those companies? All these questions are being heavily debated all the time. In this episode, we want to help brands to better understand this new environment. And to do so, we've invited Patrick. But before doing all that, tell us about yourself, your background. How did you get involved into the mobile space?
Sure. Well, so I actually became an entrepreneur in 2000. I was still a student at the time. And you know how big American entrepreneurs have started their businesses in a garage. Well, me and my partners, as we were good Frenchmen, as you can hear from my accent, we launched our business in our kitchen. So, yeah, very, very French way of launching a startup.
I like it better.
So we first launched a free lottery website, which quickly became a very good way to collect qualified and opted-in user data. And that was with actual consent, so quite revolutionary at the time. And that enabled us to become the leading email marketing company in France. And that's where I built a very strong customer marketing expertise. So we did that from 2000 to 2009. We sold it to a UK company. We stayed for 3 years there. And then we went on a break. And when we came back after a few back and forth on several ideas, that was in 2009, 2010. Mm-hmm. And it became quite obvious that there was a mobile revolution that was happening, driven mostly by the iPhone and the applications. It was quite clear to us that that was the next thing that we had to do, and that's the mobile device would probably become like the remote control of our digital lives, and some might say even of our lives. Period. So for brands, we thought that the mobile and the mobile device would provide a unique experience. And would be really mandatory for brands to adapt and to leverage. So that's why we created a mobile business. It was called Screen at the time, and we had a mobile agency business at the time, as well as technologies. And after a few years, we made a spin-off and created Engage, which was the leading continental Europe push notification technology, and we drove it for a few years. We became a European leader, and as we were exploring various ways to continue to accelerate, that's when we met with Airship. That was really the pioneer of that space and really our model. So the fit went really well. We saw that there could be some very interesting synergies. Mm-hmm. And that's when we decided to merge, and now we're part of Airship since 2019. So really excited about that.
That's great. I see a nice transition from getting your expertise with messaging via email, desktop, And once mobile hit, you had an expertise to adapt to this new environment.
Yeah.
Like pretty much like Apple was using their expertise with mobile computers to create an iPhone, leveraging their expertise from previous realm. Speaking about Airship, please tell us about your company, because I have a feeling some of our listeners may have a mental picture of a real airship, like a Zeppelin. At least that's the case with me. So please tell us about your company.
Sure. So no, we have nothing to do with Zeppelins. So Airship, we're the pioneer and the worldwide leader for mobile app experience. So what we do is that we help big brands such as ASOS, BBC, Air France, Carrefour, Starbucks, brands like that, to enhance and to enrich their user experience within their mobile apps. With a goal of increasing the user retention, the user engagement, also the knowledge, and ultimately the user value. And we do that through a platform that we call the App Experience Platform that helps our customers to develop their mobile audience through different messaging channels, so mobile app and web push notifications, but also SMS and mobile wallet. We also help them to create easy and flexible in-app experiences so that they can enrich the user onboarding experience, that they can stimulate user feature adoptions, for instance, and also to increase their conversions. And also the goal of that platform is to develop the user knowledge and the actual app service itself with optimization and A/B testing capabilities. So basically, with all of that, our customers can just enrich the experience of their users within their app. And it's very important because, we feel that app really is the preferred destination. And this is where you have the best customers. So if you're not enhancing this app experience, then you're just missing a lot of the value of your business.
Absolutely. I think next time I will be drinking Starbucks coffee, I will be remembered that you guys are part of why that coffee is that great. I mean, the whole experience is good because you're helping to elevate brand even higher and help it to build a better product. Okay, that's nice to remember. Now, yeah, sure.
Sorry, no, I mean, just in terms of like size and so on. So we're about like 300 people on 3 continents and 8 countries. So we're quite global, and we're a lot of the times in the air, also to travel. So yeah, 300 people, a lot of engineers, obviously, because we're a SaaS company. So more than 120 engineers, and I specifically manage the EMEA business. So in Europe, we have offices in Paris, London, and Munich, but also, of course, in other areas in the world like San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Portland, and also Singapore.
Oh, you have an office in Munich. I do remember seeing Airship in Munich when I was walking there, being on my vacation a few years ago. So there's a slight connection with that Airship, your company, I guess. That was actually a really nice experience to see that Airship in the air on a daily basis. Pretty beautiful sight. All right. Now, we live in a time of big changes of the internet environment in general and mobile space in particular. Well, perhaps the central figure of all these changes is privacy with a capital P. Things like growth, innovation, expansion, these are the things that were on the radar of CEOs yesterday. Today, the privacy is upfront, and Apple is a huge player in all this change. What would you suggest to brands to do in this new environment, how they should adapt?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a fair observation. So I still feel that CEOs are still kept up at night by growth, innovation topics, and so on. But clearly, yes, privacy has risen to really a very high importance level of importance for organizations. So that is linked to the power of mobile technologies and devices. It's a device that we have always on, that is always with us. So it's really embodied into our lives. And as a result, it was important to have good privacy regulations. And as you said, it came through governments, but also directly the mobile platforms and specifically Apple. And if you look back over the past 3-4 years, we've seen regulations such as GDPR in Europe, but also CCPA in California.
Yep.
We also have the e-privacy, so with the consent to integrate a tracker. But perhaps more importantly, we've had a lot of platform changes, driven obviously by Apple mostly. We've seen pretty much the end of the third-party cookies. We've seen the consent for IDFA to be the norm now, and since iOS 14.5 to be precise. We've seen also a lot of changes in iOS 15 on emails. For instance, the fact that by default the opening tracking will be blocked. But there's also other things such as the ability for users to use an email alias. That's something that some companies have not seen, and we've also seen the rise of the focus capabilities on Apple.
That's right.
Exactly. So I see all of these changes as a win for consumer privacy, but it does create some challenges for company that, as you said, have to adapt to that new era. And I think that the first point is, first of all, to understand that there's a new era, there's a new paradigm, and there's going to have to be some equal value exchange between the brand and the user. And the users, they want more control, they want more transparency, and they are open to data collection if the brands are able to bring them relevancy and a benefit for them. So we've seen that, for instance, Gartner, a big technology consultancy firm, has predicted that brands that actually provide user-level control of like marketing and data will reduce by 40% their churn and increase lifetime value by 25%. So it's really also an opportunity for brands to take advantage of that new paradigm, basically. So in a very practical level, in terms of data collection, it means that brands have to be transparent. They have to explain why they want to collect data and the benefits for the users. And that's how you're going to get users to be more engaged and also more opted in. Right. I have a good example for that. We work for a company called KLM, so a large, the leading Dutch airline. And they explained that they need the push notification opt-in to provide important travel updates. And we know that from our research, because Airship has conducted a very large consumer research on more than 9,000 respondents, we know that typically being informed of travel changes is super important to users. And 35% of users, they want to know immediately through push notifications, for instance, or other communication channels when travel changes happen. So that's just like one example, but if we take another example, such as Leroy Merlin, so the big European DIY retail chain, they explained that the geolocation opt-in will help the users to benefit from high-value features when they're in the store. So once you explain, you get just more benefits for the users, and the users agree to give data and to provide that level of information that the companies also need. A second, type of practical implication is that third-party data and also tracked first-party data are going to be scarcer. you're going to have less data that in that category. And as a result, it's very important to invest in zero-party data. So zero-party data is the data that users willfully provide you or provides a brand. Usually it's through like a data collection form or something similar. And the first-party data is the data that a company tracks or understands from the behaviors of their users. So this zero-party data is something which is increasingly important for brands to master, because they need that in order to be able to personalize the experience for their customers. And I always like to take examples because they are quite illustrating. And I find that, for instance, Disneyland Paris, they do that very well. They have what they call golden questions. So like very distinctive questions, such as like the age, do you have the number of children that you have and their age, and that kind of data that they ask their users and that users willfully respond to, give them the possibility to then personalize very well the experience, and specifically the app experience. So having this capability of collecting data to personalize the experience is also something that companies have to take into account in that changing environment. But once you have this data, you have to be relevant. You have to be relevant to your users. So if they want more control, well, you have to give it to them, and that's going to create a win-win relationship. So typically what we've seen is that brands more and more increasingly will build, for instance, preference centers in order to understand what users want to receive in terms of topics, but also sometimes in terms of frequency of communications. And that drives a lot more engagement from their users.
All right. I just want to add a couple of small things on top of what you said. That is, people may not remember, but there was a time when we didn't have safety bags in our cars. But these days, it's just the norm. We don't question it anymore. We just take it for granted. It should be like this. And I think, part of the problem can be that people have a kind of an emotional reaction. But if you think about it, it does make sense. You collect the data for a specific reason. You're not just collecting for the sake of collecting. You just have to be able to articulate that reason to your customers and explain it to them. This is essentially what has changed, because you were doing for a specific reason before, and you're going to be doing for that same reason now. But the change is that you have to explain to your customers why you're doing, what's the benefit. And I don't think brands should have a real problem with that, because they know the reason. It's just making sure to explain it vividly for their customers. And in some way, we're kind of getting back over and over to the basics of marketing. Know your customers. The better you know them, the better you're set off as a business. It's just right now you're not relying on Facebook or Google as a third party. You're relying on your own resources, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we feel that really users understand that, feel that. And when there's this reciprocal, basically value exchange, that's when it's a win-win relationship.
All right. So we're almost at the end of the fall of this year. And after a year and a half, COVID pandemic is still with us. So what lessons do you believe brands should learn from this pandemic, and particular pingdemic, if I'm using this term correct, which I wasn't sure was the thing because I don't live in UK permanently. So what should they learn from the whole experience, and not only pandemic, but the pingdemic, which is relevant to UK?
Sure. So, first let's look at the pandemic. So, as you said, we're still in it, but we've seen unprecedented growth in mobile usage and also in digital maturity. So that's the major learning, is that mobile usage has skyrocketed through the pandemics. And we've seen that throughout all industries. So people have turned to mobile to perform actions that they weren't able to do anymore. And that has boosted mobile usage and user maturity. But they've also turned to mobile to enrich their, I would say, traditional activities. So if we look at some, like data, because, I like to look at data, we've seen that, for instance, the mobile app downloads have continued to increase by 7% in 2020. And that shows that, after a decade of, like mobile economy, mobile app economy, consumers are still actively looking at new apps out of necessity or for convenience. And I remember 3-4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, people were saying, now I think it's the end of apps. And we can see that it's still not. It's still not. Mm-hmm. So, it's downloads, but it's also activity. Airship data shows that we had global active app users that grew by 31% last year. And also in terms of consumer spend and in terms of daily time spent in apps, there's still, 20-30% of growth. So, continued mobile maturity. And that's really, a very, very strong learning. And what we see is that there's also preference. So users have a preference for certain mobile apps. For instance, they look at retail apps, and users have responded to our survey saying that like 75% are more likely to turn to retail apps and to use them more than before the pandemic start, or at the same level. So there's a real shift that has happened, and it's there to last. So that's really, one of the first learning, is that there has been a huge soar in mobile usage, and it's creating some behavior shifts that are there to last. Typically, we're nearing the holiday season, and we see that 48% of our respondents expect to do 3/4 or more of their purchases online. And 47% actually are thinking about doing 3/4 or more of their online purchases through mobile. So even now, it's still a very strong trend. And with 1 year and a half, we've probably leaped by 3 or 4 years the mobile usage and the mobile maturity.
So we're going to get Black Friday from the comfort of your couch.
Yeah. and out of your pocket, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first really observation, is that overall there has been a huge surge in mobile usage. Now, my second observation is that people have turned also to mobile to do the traditional things that they were doing. And you can take, for instance, click and collect. So mobile has been quite key to that capability, because that's where you can store the proof of purchase. This is how you can authenticate yourself. That's how you can also locate where you need to go, where to pick up your purchases. So mobile has been a great companion to users to enrich their, I would say, daily life. And that's why I always say that, for me, mobile is the real augmented reality, because it is actually augmenting your daily life. So yeah, contactless capabilities have been surging. Typically payments, we've seen that, contactless payments through mobile has increased by times 3, typically in France. So yeah, great, I would say, explosion of those usage and of those interactions throughout the pandemics.
Yeah, Apple Pay is everywhere for sure.
Yeah. So what it means is that it creates kind of a retention challenge, because now consumers have also higher expectations towards mobile experience. They've discovered your app, they've discovered new apps, they've been exposed to your competitors' apps, and as a result, it means that as a brand, you need to get your mobile presence right, and you need to up your game in order to be able to sustain that increased value of those mobile users.
Yeah, because the rules of the game, not a game, but interaction with e-commerce have changed in a way that before pandemic, people may consider using mobile out of curiosity. These days, being able to place orders for the groceries, anything through Amazon or anybody else, if there's anybody else except Amazon, it's just a necessity. And when it's not the realm of curiosity, but the necessity, they're much more serious. Their expectations went high. And even when the pandemic, hopefully, we're going to go away, and if you, at some period of time, not completely, but just going to be like a next flu or something, people will still have the higher expectations because the pandemic rising up the expectations of pre-pandemic period to many apps, to many industries.
Exactly. And what is interesting is that it happens for mobile, I would say, as a silo, but it also happens in the real life. I like to take this example of like Walmart. So, Walmart is the largest retail, company in the world. And how in the past, basically retailers, their goal was to have their shoppers basically spend some time, browse in the alleys. And basically, as you spend more time in the alleys, you would basically increase your average basket value. Now, Walmart has completely changed that. And they're rolling out new store designs. And their store designs are completely driven by the mobile app experience. So it's a completely different shift in terms of structure, in terms of design, in terms of mindset. And now the goal in that new store design is to streamline the process. So users or shoppers come inside the Walmart stores. They have their mobile app, their Walmart mobile app in their hands. And the goal for Walmart is for users to gain time, to find the product through the mobile app, through like geolocation capabilities, to be able to interact, to scan products, to see what's in that product, for instance, the components, etc., to order bakery typically through the mobile app. And also afterwards, of course, to be able to do contactless and self-checkout to gain time. And what I found quite fascinating is that even the signage outside the Walmart sign is now driven or derived from the application icon. So you can see how mobile has shifted expectations inside the mobile ecosystem, but also in the real life ecosystem.
All right. I want to shift the gears a little bit. Yeah, let's get back to your expertise in push notifications text. How do you see this particular technology, push notifications, evolving in the coming years?
Sure. So, historically, we've been the first platform to send commercial notification for iOS and Android. So we're definitely the pioneer in push notifications. But today we go beyond push notifications, and as we specialize into app experience. And don't get me wrong, the push notifications are super important, and they're still maybe the ultimate application retention enhancer. Mm-hmm. And you can see that, for instance, app users who receive push notifications are 3 times more loyal or have higher retention, 3 times higher retention than people or users who do not receive push notifications. So really, it's super important, and it's actually also a very profitable contact channel. VP, one of our customers, which is the European leader for flash sales, they've conducted analysis, and they see that push notifications, for instance, are 3.5 more profitable than email sends per 1,000 users. So obviously it's key. There's no doubt about it, but it's not the only element which is core to our expertise and our capabilities, because say the user is not opt-in. That, for instance, to receive push notifications, you need to be opt-in, and there's about 51% of iOS users that are opt-in and 81% of Android users that are opt-in. So if users are not opt-in, you need to also be able to use the other communication channels and to orchestrate them in order to bring users back inside the app. Really, the app is the preferred destination, and as a result, we think that companies need to up their game and to really do everything they can to enrich their app experience. So that goes through push notifications, of course, but it goes through also orchestrating the different communication channels. And what about if the user is not inside the app? So, if the user is actually inside the app. So when you're inside the app, the push notifications, they don't have any impact, because the goal of the push notifications is to bring users back inside the app. So once you're inside the app, that's where you have other capabilities that play a role. Typically, what we call in-app messages, but also app experiences. Sometimes also chat can come into play, and that is key because applications are a destination; they are not a communication channel anymore. So typically you are going to be looking at formats such as banners or interstitials or pop-ups that are targeted towards the customers, that are displayed inside the app as the users are browsing, and that you can trigger based on their behaviors. So the whole point of those in-app experiences is to stimulate a certain behavior, to, for instance, show a new feature that the user hasn't discovered, and as a result, to really encourage the users to have the full app experience. So it goes way beyond push notification, and obviously, since the rules of apps have changed, the rules of app experience have changed. There are lots of rules that companies are going to have to go through in order to up their game. And for me, there are three, I would say, main topics. The first topic is relevancy and personalization, and it goes with the shift that we've seen in privacy. Second topic is sophistication. Since users have much higher expectations, you need to up your game in terms of how you communicate and interact with the user. And I would say that the third topic is also the usability, because if we're talking about mobile app, mobile app is where things go faster, things are richer, things are smoother, but it's also harder in terms of development, because it's very reliant on release cycles and development resources. So these are three, I would say, areas or dimensions where I think the whole industry is going to go towards. And if I look at how we approach that on the relevancy side and personalization side, we know that the data is key because it's going to be scarcer. So typically, I was talking about this zero-party data topic,
right?
How to collect data from users willfully, and that's it's great because we have the chance in mobile apps of having an environment where users are actually eager, perhaps more eager than on websites, to provide data and to answer questions. And it was quite interesting to discuss with Manchester United, and they had seen from comparing their mobile app with their websites that users were I would say more keener, I don't know how to say it, to provide and to answer surveys or questions. And once you collect that data, And of course, you need to have very good targeting capabilities in order to be able to send the right message to the right user. And we've seen also that users want more control. So it is important to be able to provide them this capability. And you can do that through preference centers. And I was giving this example of VP, this European flash sales leader. They have a great application preference center where users can decide what brands they want to receive offers from, but also the frequency that they want to receive communications, and also the channel. Do they want to receive those communications through push notifications or through emails? So, once you have this level of granular data, then that's when you have real relevancy for the users and also great personalization. And I can give another example, typically, for instance, the BBC. Mm-hmm. When for media companies, getting the right message is super important because there is a level of notifications, for instance, that you're sending above which you're not creating additional traffic. So the audience of your mobile app is super linked to the number of notifications that you send, but above a certain threshold, it's difficult to create. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So what is key is to be able to find the topics that users want so that you can send more push notifications, but more importantly, more relevant push notifications. So what the BBC does is that they actually send push notification to ask users if they want to receive more messages from that specific topic. So it can be like the royal wedding, it can be the Olympics, it can be also like, the COVID situation. And when they do that, they have a subset of users that are extremely interested by this topic. They can send more messages, and the messages that they send get 4 times higher open rates than, I would say, more regular messages. So, going back to what I was saying before, it's a win-win relationship. Users get relevant messages and the brand gets more engagement from their users.
Yeah, that's actually a great point from what you've just said. And especially I like the part about the Manchester United's, the fact that we have psychologically different profile of interaction with the mobile device is, not necessary. We don't have that amount of affection with the computer standing on a table than with a phone that we have because of its design, because of its intimacy, because of its daily use. We are more willing to share information with a company in a situation when the company has the right framework, the right environment for interaction between me and the company. Okay, that was terrific answer. And now I have just a few quick questions that are not related to the topic on the table. These are the questions I'm asking every guest on this show to know him or her a little bit better. Rapid fire questions. And here goes number 1. What smartphone do you have now? Have you been switching between iOS and Android or just staying one side all the time?
So right now I have an iPhone 12 Pro. I have some Android devices for testing, but I've been a quite fond iPhone user from the start, actually.
All right, so you're on the iOS side. Do you remember your first mobile phone before mobile era? Smartphone era.
I'm quite reluctant to say that because people will understand my age. It's actually it's an Ericsson mobile phone. It's not even a Sony Ericsson. It's an Ericsson. So I was really in the year 2000, and it was like very small, very thin, with like a flap thingy. I don't know how you say that. And at the time, it had a low autonomy because it was only 3 or 4 days. So when you think back of what an autonomy for a mobile phone now is, it's really quite fun.
All right, getting back to 2021. Today, imagine you left your smartphone at home. What would be the most missing feature for you?
I think it would have to be the camera, because I like to take a lot of pictures. I like to immortalize some family moments, but also friend moments. So I do enjoy all the updates that I see on the iPhone cameras, because I can put more effects. And yeah, so probably that would be the one thing that I would miss the most. But not having my maps also would be quite difficult.
Got it. Perhaps there are some technologies, could be hardware, software, that you believe your beloved iPhone 12 Pro is still missing. What would you like this thing to be able to do that is not capable of doing right now?
Well, I think getting more autonomy, more battery life from maybe the sun or something, that would be great, because we're obviously always trying to find a cord to charge it.
Yeah.
But I guess what would make me really excited is to have always more and more like life enhancement. Typically I did a diet, and I used a mobile app to do that. That was incredibly efficient. I have a ring which is connected to my phone to track my sleep. So I'm always excited by those life enhancements. And I guess being able to have always like more timely tips, or things that are relevant to the context, and that would make my life easier, or bring insight to how I conduct my life. These are the elements which I'm I guess more excited about.
Got it. You went way farther than me. The ring. I stopped with Apple Watch. I thought that was pretty far, but the ring, that's nice.
Yeah.
All right. Before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you and know more about what you do?
I think that the best way would be on LinkedIn. I'm not a huge poster, but I do like to share some insight, and I can be, of course, contacted through that channel.
Terrific. Thanks a lot for coming on our podcast, Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Bye-bye. And that was Patrick Mareuil, Managing Director EMEA at Airship. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. We release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you'll be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer, if you're still listening to podcasts on your computer, as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review and comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.